Thank you for coming to the first NIST Virtual Academic Career Fair. We have hosted 8 career fairs last academic years, and then they are all well received. This year, during the special pandemic, we want to launch a new series of virtual academic career fairs. Today is the first one of this career fair series. And then today we are very fortunate to have 3 department heads. The Kate Calder from UT Austin, Abel Rodriguez from University of Washington, Jiayang Sun from the George Mason. They're going to share their very important information about their positions and about their hiring process. And then after their presentations, we're going to have Q&A. So you can either type your questions or you can raise your hand. I can open your mic so you can ask your question. And then after the main programs, we have 45 minutes informal social hours. So here's the meeting ID. So you please feel free to join. So if you want to hang out with other job candidates. And then also we're going to have our second virtual academic career fairs in December. It's going to be held on December 9 or 10. So we have not decided the actual date yet. So that you're gonna see another 3 NIST affiliates who have openings. Today we are fortunate to have 3 department heads from 3 universities. So all of them, they have multiple openings. So as you can see, UT Austin have at least 3 openings and also a postdoc fellow on COVID-19. And then for University of Washington has at least 2 tenure track faculty positions, also 1 non-tenure track faculty position. And George Mason has multiple tenure track or tenure positions. And also, there are more jobs from the NIST affiliates like Cornell University, Emory University, Purdue, and Texas A&M. So all of these they also have multiple openings. So the details are available at the NIST website, so nist.org/careers. And today, with 3 speakers, we're going to explore some questions of interest, including what are the preferred qualifications, what are the distinguishing characteristics of candidates for their institute, also what are their plans for the hiring process, given the special travel restrictions and social distancing. And also we hope they can also give the general advice to students or postdocs who are on the job market this year. So we all know this is going to be a tough year. Also, if you have more questions, you may ask during the Q&A session. So first, we're going to have the Kate Calder to talk about their openings in the also hiring process at University of Texas, Austin. Yeah, let's welcome Kate.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Well, first, I'd like to thank NIST for inviting me to talk about academic positions during this interesting time we're all experiencing right now. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending this session. It's great to see so much interest in the academic job market at this point in time. So my presentation is going to be roughly broken up into 3 different parts. I'm going to start off by sharing some of my thoughts just generally about the statistics academic job market this year and where I see it going in the future. All definitely just my opinion. I don't have any inside information beyond what's going on at my own institution, but I thought that might be helpful perspective to share. Talk a little bit about my department and our positions that we're offering. And then I'll include with some advice for those of you who are applying for an academic position for the first time. Okay, so some thoughts on the academic job market in statistics. So the first thing I thought I would mention is just that when I look at kind of the landscape of which universities have positions and which universities don't, and the number of positions and the rank of positions, there's just a lot of heterogeneity. And I think it's important that especially junior statisticians who are maybe looking for their first academic position to kind of keep in mind that this is just a very strange time we're in right now. And there's a lot of variability in terms of the way universities are reacting to the pandemic. From what I'm seeing, there's big differences between public and private institutions. Public and private institutions are funded very differently and have different constraints. And so I think some of that we're seeing there, but there, even within the private and public university spaces, there's considerable differences in terms of how budgeting is done and what kind of the financial implications are of things like drops in enrollment that some universities are experiencing. I think another explanation for why we're seeing so much variability comes down to the geographic origin of the undergraduate student populations, which many universities rely on for revenue. And while there's uncertainty in that, I think there's going to be uncertainty in faculty hiring. In Texas, we have very rigid rules about where our undergraduate student population comes from. We're required by law to have 90% of our undergraduate students from the state of Texas. And as a result of that, we haven't had much variation in enrollment patterns. That's going to be obviously very different though, depending on the nature of school. And then the last thing is kind of the extent of auxiliary operations of a university that I think is impacting decisions. So universities that have major sports operations, athletic operations, concert facilities, all of those kinds of things that are having dramatic impacts on profits. I think that sometimes there's conservatism on the academic front just because of the challenges that those auxiliary operations are providing. From my perspective, though, I really am very hopeful that the long-term impacts on the pandemic on the academic job market and statistics will be minimal. We've seen tremendous growth across the United States and even across the world over the last few years. And so I think what we might have is a little bit of a dip for the next couple of years, and then there will be a correction, and the size of statistics departments, data sciences departments is going to kind of continue to grow. At least that's what my prediction is. So my advice to any of you who are entering the job market for the first time this year and you know are interested in an academic position is first to apply. I don't think things are as dire as people were originally thinking that they were, but also to try not to be too discouraged if things don't work out. This is not a normal year, and people who would have had multiple offers a couple of years ago may not find something immediately. But again, my advice is don't give up. If an academic career is something that you're interested in trying, I think there will be a correction. I think there will be more jobs coming in the next couple of years. And, you know, I hope that we don't lose talent because of the situation that we're in, and due to the fact that we have fewer positions available this year. The other thing I wanted to mention is that from my vantage point, I'm seeing that that across kind of all academic processes, there's going to be a lot of changes. And I think some of our quote rules for academic careers in statistics or really any academic fields are changing. So for example, I've heard many universities are kind of trying to figure out how to adjust promotion and tenure processes to take into account kind of the variable impacts that the pandemic has had on faculty career trajectories, creating things like COVID impact statements that essentially move away from a rigid tenure clock to something that's more flexible, that acknowledges that the COVID pandemic has had impacted different faculty in different ways. I also think that we may see something where kind of the thought of moving from industry to academia becomes more acceptable or more normal. I know certainly the advice that I got when I was thinking about where to start my career, I was advised that if I had any interest in academia, to try that first, that going from industry to academia was not usually a possibility. I imagine that that's going to change, at least in our fields, in the near future. Although certainly that's my opinion and others might disagree. So moving on to my own department, which is the Department of Statistics and Data Sciences at UT Austin. As Lingzhu mentioned, yes, we're hiring. We have 3 positions, one tenured, one tenure track, and one open rank. The junior positions have a deadline of November 30th, and the senior positions will be kind of doing a review on a rolling basis starting around December 15th. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't have a lot to share with you about exactly what our interviews will look like. Kind of everything prior to the interview is mostly being handled in the standard type of way. We have an online system, Interfolio, if you're familiar with that we use to manage applications, and we have a hiring committee that includes 4 different faculty members who do initial screening, and then the full faculty members make decisions on shortlists and everything after that. We do know that interviews will be conducted virtually, but we're trying to view the fact that travel is not going to be required as part of the interview as an opportunity to maybe be a little bit more flexible and not think about needing to cram in an entire interview in a single day. But I don't have any details on that yet. I will mention that I expect our department will be hiring at both the junior and senior levels for the next several years. So even if things don't work out for you this year and you're interested in UT Austin, or perhaps you don't think this is the right time for a move, I do want to mention that my expectation is that our hiring will continue. And I'll also point out that it's possible we may not fill these 3 positions this year. That's certainly the goal, but due to the complications of the pandemic and people's kind of ability to move, I wouldn't be completely surprised if we didn't have 3 new faculty starting next fall. And again, that's okay. I think we're aiming to grow our faculty to a particular size, and we'll get there eventually, even if we don't go as fast as we'd maybe hoped as we start out on this hiring season. So why might you be interested in a position at UT Austin? I only moved to Austin about, 14, 15 months ago. When I was initially thinking about taking the position, I was kind of skeptical about Austin and moving to Texas. Lived in the Midwest of the United States almost my whole life. And I really have grown or have been impressed by the city of Austin and am loving living there. So I think that's one of the the reasons to consider a move to Austin. It's a very vibrant, growing city that has kind of an exciting downtown core area, but is also very close and connected to really beautiful kind of natural spaces with lots of outdoor activities and interesting things to explore. Austin kind of has a unique culture, which is and their slogan is "Keep Austin Weird." And there's kind of a quirkiness to the city that I think makes it a really, again, kind of fun place to live. UT Austin is the flagship campus of the UT system, University of Texas system. Texas has two state systems, the University of Texas and Texas A&M. University of Texas is a large public institution, around 50,000 students or so, and it's located just north of downtown Austin. So it's a pretty, the campus is fairly urban, although it's definitely self-contained. UT Austin has strengths in a lot of different areas, but certainly computer science, or computing in general is one of the areas that it is particularly well known for. And just a couple of kind of exciting things that are going on here in that dimension. A couple of years ago, the university received a $60 million grant from the NSF to construct what was at the time the fifth fastest supercomputer in the world. I think it's now 8th or so. But nevertheless, computing facilities are really world-class here. And then more from kind of the computer science side and electrical engineering side, although that's changing as my department is growing. Areas like machine learning, AI are also very well established on campus. And in fact, UT Austin was recently selected as one of NSF's, or the site of one of NSF's AI institutes focused on the foundations of machine learning. And that's something that our statistics faculty are involved with. So a little more about our department. We're very new. So statistics, there have been statisticians at UT for a very long time, but the department wasn't created until 2014. Currently our faculty, as kind of a collective, have expertise in areas such as statistical machine learning, Bayesian statistics, and causal inference. Many of us do fairly significant interdisciplinary collaborations, and that's certainly something that's very supported. We currently have a PhD and MS program in statistics. Our PhD program is also brand new, but I think— I can't do that for you. Sorry about that, my Siri went up. Our PhD program is fairly new. It started around the same time as the department. We've had 12 students graduate so far, but it's continuing to grow and is really, I think, kind of taken off faster than anyone expected. We're in the early stages of planning an undergraduate major in statistics and data science, and hope to launch that in the near future. In terms of what we're looking for in faculty recruiting, we are interested in people with research programs that will complement and extend our areas of strength. So if you don't work in one of these areas that I've listed up here, please don't decide not to apply. We want to kind of extend our strengths, and especially in ways that kind of complement and enhance what we already have going on. We're interested in, of course, excellent teachers and mentors. There's lots of opportunities for curriculum development, for playing important roles in building our graduate programs. And then lastly, we are looking for faculty who are really excited about helping to build a world-class department. Being in a brand new department that is still very much growing is, in my opinion, is an opportunity. If you're looking for some place to go where you can lock yourself in your office and just not worry about anything but your classes and your research, then we might not be the right place. But for somebody who is interested in building something and kind of creating a new modern department, I think this is an excellent place to be. And that's one of the primary reasons I decided to move to UT Austin. Okay, so I'll just finish up with some advice for applicants. So this is mostly geared towards people who are entering the academic job market for the first time. I think you should feel free to apply for any position if there's a non-zero probability that you would accept an offer if it's extended. If there's no chance that you're going to take a position, don't apply for it. I follow that with a couple of opinions that others might disagree with. I very much discourage people from applying for academic positions as practice. So if you're planning on doing a postdoc or maybe staying an extra year in graduate school, unless you really would consider taking a position if you got one, I don't think it's a good idea to practice. In fact, I've seen that kind of go, in some sense, very wrong when somebody gets an offer and turns it down and decides to stay in graduate school. That does not look good and can ultimately cause some hard feelings. Another important point is don't worry about whether you exactly fit the applicant profile in job ads. I say this especially for women and other groups that are underrepresented in our field. Sometimes I think potential applicants tend to screen themselves out of the process. I think that kind of just limits the options available. And there can be a lot of reasons why particular profiles are written the way they are in terms of kind of internal politics of getting a position approved, et cetera. So if you're interested in being a faculty member at a department and they are hiring, my suggestion is to apply for the job, no matter what the profile is stating. Get letters of recommendation from people who know you well. That seems obvious, but I have a couple points to mention that maybe are not universally agreed on and maybe not as obvious. So in my opinion, applicants seeking their first faculty position don't need external letters. So I don't think it's important that you get somebody as like an external reviewer to submit a letter. I think those letters tend to not be very helpful. I also very much like it when graduate students who are applying for faculty positions have letters from a faculty member at their graduate institution who's not their advisor. So either somebody on their committee or maybe somebody who they've talked to about research or had worked for as an RA or something like that. I think those letters tend to be incredibly informative and helpful to the review process. And so I strongly encourage getting one of those. For the research statement, which is a very important part of an application, my suggestions are to focus on the specific contributions that you have made to the field, and depending on where you are in your career, that the number of contributions you've made will vary quite a bit. The research statement is not a place, though, to provide an overview of the field. So I would be very focused on what you have contributed. Again, my opinion is to avoid self-evaluation. Say what you've done, but you don't need to characterize what you've done as, you know, the best thing ever, or, you know, the most important paper in the last 10 years or something like that. That's for people who are reading the statement to evaluate, or for something to be in a letter of recommendation. Another opinion is to be specific about your future research directions. I think faculty hiring decisions are made based on kind of the expected trajectory of somebody. And so the more information you can give a hiring committee about where you plan to be in both the near and long term, the more helpful those research statements actually are. I suggest writing a cover letter that is tailored to each position to which you apply, describing why you're interested in the specific position. It could be a template that you have that you send to all universities, but I think there should be at least a paragraph in there that you swap out that talks specifically about the position that you're interested in. For the interview, I think most interviews are not particularly in academia are not particularly surprising. So just be able to succinctly describe your research and your teaching experience, your interest in the position, et cetera. It's very rare that you're going to get kind of a challenging question or something that's unexpected in the interview process. It's very important to ask questions during your interview. But a piece of advice is to only ask the same question to multiple people if it's reasonable to assume that you might get different answers and that having those different answers would be valuable information to you. So don't start every meeting that you have with different faculty members asking, say, if the department has an undergraduate major. There is one right or wrong answer to that. And faculty members talk to each other. And if you ask the exact same question for which there's a right answer to everybody, that could indicate kind of a lack of interest in the department. Another thing is when you're interviewing is to demonstrate interest in the specific position, not just in getting any academic job. So do your homework and be ready to explain why you're particularly interested in the job that you're applying for. A job talk is arguably the most important part of the interview process. I think there's a wide variety of opinions, but in my opinion, focusing a job talk on a single paper usually works best. That said, I think it's okay to have 1 or 2 slides giving an overview of your research program, but I would plan to spend the bulk of the talk describing a single paper on research that's relatively complete and nicely packaged. It's very important that you leave time for questions and during your talk, be willing to take questions. I've seen a lot of junior candidates get very anxious about questions during their talk because they're concerned that they won't be able to finish. But the question process is really an important part of the interview. Faculty who are making the decisions want to see how you think and how you know the literature and kind of how creative you are. And that's why there's oftentimes lots of questions. So if you dismiss those or don't take the time to give careful answers to them, you can end up kind of not coming across as well as you might if you're open to the questions. Then last slide I have here is just on accepting and declining a position if you're offered one. So remember, the goal is if you have multiple offers, is to select the position that is best for you. I have heard that some people think of the academic job market as a game sometimes, where the goal is to collect as many offers as you can. I think it's not a game. It's you know, kind of finding the best matches for people that are out there. So that's the goal. Again, my opinion, maybe not everyone agrees, but if you decide at any point that you're no longer interested in the position, decline the offer immediately. Don't hold on to job offers for months and string departments along if you have no interest in taking the position. That can hurt the department in terms of being able to make an offer to another candidate, and these strategies can get out and cause hard feelings, which is something that, of course, nobody wants. And then lastly, it's important to be polite and gracious while you are deciding which offer to accept. And that goes, I think, even if you get an offer or if you get a declination. Our community is relatively small, And the people that you interview with are going to be people you're connected to for throughout your career. And you want to, even if things don't work out in terms of joining a department, you're building relationships and a network, a professional network, and you want to keep that as strong and accessible to you as possible as you continue on in your career. So with that, I will stop and I guess turn it over to the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So the next one, we have the Abel Rodriguez from University of Washington. So the, so thank you. So,
Yeah, thank you, Lingsu.
Yeah.
Let me put this in full screen mode. Well, again, like Kate, I want to thank both the organizers for inviting me to speak here, and also you all for showing up on a holiday for a talk. So my talk is going to be structured very similarly to Kate's. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, both in the university and the department. So we are located in Seattle. This is a beautiful, down here on the bottom right, there's a beautiful picture of the city. We're just north of the Space Needle. And you can see Mount Rainier there in the back. You can see the sound, the Puget Sound right there. So we are an urban university located within Seattle. You can see some pictures from campus, like Red Square up there on the bottom right, and the quad kind of at the top in the middle. And we are also a big sports school. So we have a pretty good football program. The Huskies is the mascot. That's the main reason why I put it up. So it's a very vibrant city, about 2.5 million people. We are the flagship university of the state. There are a couple more campuses of the University of Washington, one in Bothell and one in Tacoma. And there are a few other public universities on the state, but University of Washington is the flagship. And it has, you can see some of the numbers down there. So we have about 31,000 undergraduates, about 16,000 graduate and professional students. About 60% of our students are international, and that's roughly a cap that the state has. So like Texas, we have kind of some pretty tight rules on how many international students can come. Particularly at the undergraduate level. And we have a very high proportion of Asian Americans, which reflects some of the economic and geographical realities of Washington. The statistics department at the University of Washington, it's part of the Division of Natural Sciences, which is in turn part of the College of Arts and Sciences. Arts and Sciences is the largest college on campus. We offer undergraduate degrees, in particular a BS, a master's, and a PhD program, but we also collaborate in a number of other programs that are kind of shared across campus. So ACMS is an undergraduate program that is shared between math, applied math, stats, and computer science. We have a data science master's program that it's again shared across 6 departments. We have some programs in quantitative ecology, on which we also provide some of the core curriculum. So we're deeply embedded in the intellectual life of the campus through joint courses and programs. We have a large number of faculty that have joint appointments across the campus, and we have partnerships in a number of research centers. And that graph on the right basically gives you a little bit of a sense of the units or the groups that we tend to be closer to. And I actually try to, in some sense, use the distance to the statistics bubble to indicate the level of closeness. So we have a number of faculty that are jointly appointed with computer science and engineering, a number of people jointly appointed with biostatistics, which is a separate department in the School of Public Health. Also in sociology, there is the Center for Statistics and the Social Sciences, which is a separate unit, but where a number of our faculty are appointed to. and basically this gives you a picture of the 4 or 5 groups that we have close affinity to. So we have close affinity to people working on environmental sciences. We have kind of close affinity to engineering and computer science in different ways, a strong buy-in within social sciences, a strong buy-in within public health. And we also have a strong relationship with applied math and math. So this relationship is not so much through joint appointments and things like that. It's more through a shared curriculum, particularly at the undergraduate level. So I think one of the things that always attracted me towards University of Washington is this kind of how deeply embedded things are just in the intellectual environment of the campus. So we do have, as was mentioned before, a few open searches. We have currently about 19 faculty that are affiliated with the department, but a number of those are shared appointments. We are recruiting for 2 tenure track positions and for 1 term limited, so non-tenure track acting assistant professor. One thing that I would like to say about this is that we plan, or the way we treat our acting assistant professors is we treat them just like tenure track assistant professors in all ways. So I think that this is a really good experience. So the teaching load is the same as the teaching load for an assistant professor. The mentoring and support that we provide for our acting assistant professors is the same that we provide for our tenure track. So we really try to support people who come into these positions. The full consideration date for the tenure track positions has actually passed, but literally if you apply within the next 2 or 3 days, you can probably still be considered. We're still kind of looking through applications. The full consideration date for the acting position is February 1st. So for that one, there is kind of quite a bit of leeway and time for you to apply if you want. So what matters in a tenure track application? I guess this has not really changed with COVID-19. So obviously research contributions are very important, and you typically kind of provide evidence for that through your papers and through your research statement. One thing that is important is that we want to see contributions to statistical theory, methodology, and or computation. And if you also have contributions to other disciplines, that's something that is also very, very valued by the department. So in some sense, the ideal candidate in many ways has kind of contributions on both sides. We look, as Kate mentioned, we look at the work that you have already done, but we also look at the promise or the trajectory of your future research. So from that point of view, having a clear articulation of what your research agenda will be, including, for example, things like where funding could be secured to continue your research, is an important piece of something that you can convey through your statement. We also care about scholarly impact and citizenship. So this is kind of a broader metric than just looking at papers and research statements. So we look at, whether you have given presentations, whether in conferences or departments, whether you have received awards, whether you have provided any service to the community. So these are things that also entered into our evaluation. We definitely look at fit with the departmental academic strategic plan, which means that we may be more interested. So the way we cast our advertisements is we want to be broad and open. So we want to see what's out there. And then we want to think about, based on the applications that we have, how those applications fit into the kind of needs and just the direction that the department wants to take in the future. We do look for teaching and mentoring experience and quality and evidence of that. And of course fits with the departmental teaching needs at the time. We are looking for commitment to teaching and mentoring across the curriculum. So it's important. So we are an institution with a very strong graduate program. And so we definitely, research is a key component of our search, but we also want people that is interested in contributing to undergraduate education in different ways. And that's, I think, particularly important because we are a state institution. So we're a publicly funded institution. So we do have a commitment and a responsibility towards the state in terms of training undergraduates. And finally, we look at diversity, and I'll talk a little bit more about the diversity component in a second. So how the process has changed. So we have paid quite a bit of attention to modifying the process based on kind of the new circumstances. So the typical process is a 2-round process where we would first speak about maybe 10 or 12 candidates, and we would run some interviews. And then based on that, we would have invited 6 people for campus visits. Those campus should have included meetings with graduate students in the department, with faculty, from other departments, as well as from our own department, of course, obviously with the chair and with the divisional dean. Those meetings should have tended to be, for the most part, individual meetings with the faculty members. And it would be a fairly intense 1 day or 1.5 day schedule for the interview. That has changed considerably. So now we have moved in some sense into a 3-round process. The first round is very similar to the old first round, where we are still gonna be selecting about 12 people that we'll do a short Zoom interview with. And then from that, we'll down select to 8 or 9 people. And in some sense, this is one of the advantages of being online. That so as Kate was mentioning, the job talk is probably one of the most important components of the actual interview. And so what we wanted to do is to have, now that we're remote and we don't have to pay for people to travel, try to broaden the number of people that can give talks, and just to give us a better understanding of the research. And so we're gonna have 8 or 9 half-day interviews that include a 1-hour talk, all of them. And also they will include meetings with some faculty and probably the meeting with the graduate students. And then from that, we'll down select to another 4 or 5 people that will do kind of the other half-day surround interviews. So one way to think about this is that what used to be an intense 1-day schedule for 6 people has now been broken down into 8 people are doing half-day, and then of those 8, about 4 are doing another half-day. So the amount of effort is about the same, but we get to see kind of more job talks that I think it's, as I said, one of the most important things in the process. So we're keeping the meeting with the graduate students as part of the second round. So the 8 and 9 will likely meet with the graduate students, but the meetings with faculty from other departments, the formal meeting with the chair, with me, and the meeting with the divisional dean will only happen for the individuals in this relatively short list. We're also considering doing some of the meetings with the faculty in pairs. And there are a number of reasons for that, but so that may seem to work better. Another thing that we are considering is, particularly for the 3rd round interviews, is to keep some of them not necessarily ask people to block a long 4-hour or 6-hour interval and have all them consecutive, but maybe have them over a couple of days and try to fit in people according to these needs. And this is in good part just an attempt to accommodate different personal circumstances that different candidates may have. I myself have a small kid at home, and I can definitely understand people who can't make 4 hours in a row or 6 hours in a row because of childcare concerns or other restrictions that you may have at home. So we're trying to build in kind of quite a lot of flexibility. We're also building in long breaks. Even if we do things continuously over 4 or 6 hours, we're trying to build in a large number of longer breaks so that people can kind of attend to their own personal circumstances. And finally, there will be no dinners, quote unquote, or lunches. It doesn't make sense. Many of the candidates will be in different time zones as the committee, so having a quote unquote dinner doesn't make sense from that point of view. And you also don't get, so the personal interaction that is in some sense what you're trying to gain out of these meetings is not, or the dinners and lunches, is not something that really comes across naturally when you try to do those things online. So that is, roughly speaking, the structure of the process that we're going to be using. Um, there are some unresolved challenges with this process that I described. So one of them is that we lack meaningful social interaction with the candidates. And I think that building some of that rapport is important, and just getting a feeling for both sides, also for you guys as candidates, just getting a sense of whether you feel comfortable with the people in the department and whether it's an environment that you like. It's going to be an important consideration, because hopefully you will be spending the next few years with us. More generally, it's hard to showcase or learn about kind of the intangibles that that you can only kind of get to if you are there. So Seattle has a fantastic quality of life. So lots of natural beauty around us, sports, culture. So it's a big city. And it's very interesting to live here. It's also in principle, an expensive city, but once you understand kind of how the city works, you can see kind of ways around, or you can kind of understand why the cost of living is relatively high. And more importantly, you can kind of understand how to deal with some of that cost of living. And more generally, the campus environment. So what I was describing in the beginning about being really interconnected with the rest of the campus is something that you really do not understand until you have had the opportunity to be kind of on the campus and talk to different people and see what's going on. Another challenge is just interacting during the interview. So don't be surprised if some of the faculty, when you have your one-on-one or your one-on-two meetings, they want to discuss technical topics. And that is something that it's particularly hard during a Zoom interview. So one kind of silly, but I think important recommendation is try to find a way to have a mechanism through which you can write during the Zoom interview, so that you can actually have a meaningful discussion with faculty if they want to have one. The other thing to remember is, and at this point, I think we're all aware of this, but in the moment of the interview, when we are stressed out, we may kind of fail to remember that, that communication cues may be lost in this online environment. So communication is much harder. So try to kind of be conscious of that. And that works both ways. So it also has to do with kind of how you understand or how you interpret comments or reactions from committee members. And there are questions about what happens after accepting. So I actually just moved to Seattle this summer. So I had the experience of moving during the pandemic, and finding housing it can be a challenge. If you have kids, you need to find the schools for your kids. If you have a spouse or partner, you have to think about finding jobs for them. So these are things that I think, in our case, the university is starting to generate resources that I think will be available to us by the time we are actually running the interviews and making offers. But we have to acknowledge that these are challenges, and the department will work with you and will help you in terms of securing some of these issues. So what is important? As I said before, the job talk is critical. There are kind of two models, the narrow but deep and the broad but shallow. This is something that Kate also alluded to. If you go to talks from candidates in computer science, which I used to do quite a bit in my previous institution, those job talks tend to like to be broad but shallow. So they will tell you about 3 or 4 papers simultaneously, give you kind of the big picture, but very little technical detail about what is going on. I think that model works well for senior faculty that have kind of multiple strands that they can pull together, and you can tell a story around that. But in the case of junior searches, I think I agree with Kate that narrow but deep. So pick a particular paper where you can show your skills as a statistician. I think it's the best way to go for searches. Some people talk about this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. That is, you should give the first 1/3 of your talk should anybody that is not a statistician should be able to understand. It's just kind of a broad review of the topic. 1/3 of the talk should be higher level and something that a statistician that is not necessarily an expert in your field should be able to understand. And then the last third should be the technical piece that, you know, where you should try to impress somebody that knows the technical area. So something like this is usually recommended as a good way to structure talks. And one thing that is also important to have in the job talk is, again, we look at promise. So conveying how your work has legs, so how it can be extended, so how it provides the base for, you know, writing papers for the next 6 or 8 years is something that is going to be very important. And it's something that is going to be very important to articulate, not only in the job talk, but also in your statement. So one common mistake that I see looking at research statements or teaching statements is that it seems like you are just recounting the things that are in your CV. And so you're just, rather than listing them, you are just making paragraphs that say the same thing. That is the wrong way to write your statement. So you wanna put in there things that are not obvious in the curriculum, or things or connections across things that may not be obvious to the reader. In general, you want to try to articulate a story. So that's the kind of statement that really has the most impact. Do your research. Make sure that you understand whether your work connects with that of current faculty in the department that you're applying to. I have seen people, for example, try to bash, I don't know, let me pick a random topic, penalized regression in front of an audience that includes some people that have made their career out of developing penalized regression methods. So that's probably not going to be the most successful strategy to get a job. So make sure that you know kind of who you're talking to when you are both interviewing and making your talk in particular. And also the other thing that you can do is you can try to articulate what aspects of the environment on the campus are things that are most interesting to you. And finally, so to talk a little bit about diversity contributions, people tend to think that, you know, if you're not a member of an underrepresented group, you really can't say much about diversity, and that is false. Another component that sometimes gets overlooked is that you can have contributions to diversity through your research. So if you work, just to give an obvious example, so if you work in environmental health sciences, there is a long thread of research about inequalities that are related to the environment. And so kind of highlighting how your research connects to that and how you could make contributions there would be kind of one way to talk about diversity, even if you are not from an underrepresented group. The other thing to highlight is that it's not only about what you have already done in terms of diversity, especially if you are a junior faculty or somebody that is coming just out of grad school, but also about whether so demonstrating that you understand what diversity means, in particular in the context of the US, which has its own nuances, and demonstrating that, that it's something that you care about and something that you want, that you have ideas on how to address moving forward. So again, don't get discouraged because you haven't done a lot, but think about whether you can demonstrate an understanding of these questions and whether you can propose things moving forward. So I think that's it for me, and thank you. I'm looking forward to the questions after all the talks.
Thank you, Abel, for sharing the new interview process, also giving a few more days for the applicant to submit their files. And then now we have our third speaker, Jiayan Sun. And then Jiayan, you can share slides and stuff.
Okay, All right. Thank you, Lin Zong, and thank you, Jim, for the invitation, and thank you all for coming. I'm Jiayang Sun from Department of Statistics at George Mason University. And I'm going to talk about the 5 central themes that last 2 speakers have talked about, but with slightly different order. And first, are you hiring? Yes, we are. We're going to hire at least 2. And for the 2, we would like to have 1 senior faculty and 1 junior faculty. And we're also going to have additional possible TTIP positions. What's TTIP? TTIP means TAC, Talent Investment Program, and sponsored by state of Virginia. So just in last month, actually during this month, we were writing those TTIP cluster proposals. So we will know the outcome, should be in this month as well. So we wrote 4 because we are in this new school of computing, and which is going to span off from our engineering school. And in this new school of computing, there are 3 departments. One is computer science, another is statistics, the third is IST, information science and technology. Here, NS is for network science. Another CSBM is computational system biomedical science. And a CCIs, computational climate science. CBDS is computational biostatistics and data science. In each of this cluster, we can hire up to 5 positions. You will be able to see additional information in this link, which I have provided to you. Second, preferred qualifications for a tenure track faculty. For junior faculty, and we require that you have a PhD in statistics or a related field. And we like you to have a potential for excellence and productivity in research and a strong commitment to high quality teaching. And for senior faculty, we like you to have a demonstrated records of the following. Of course, we like you to have a PhD in statistics and a related field. And we like you to have outstanding research, demonstrated funding, excellent teaching. And because we have the excellent junior faculty in the department, and I'm proud to say all our junior faculty who have been here at least a year all have external funding, very strong external funding. And we like to have leaders at senior position. So if you come in as a senior candidate, we would like you to be interested in mentoring, interested in the department, and interested in profession. We like you to be a star. We like you to be a rising star, potential star, or established star. And if only thing you're interested in, like what Kay said, just lock the door, do your own work. That's not what we're looking for. We like you to be active member of the department. We like you to be a leader. So that's what we prefer to have. So if you look at difference, what I have put it here for senior faculty is demonstrated records. Okay, distinguished characteristics of candidates we wish to have. And of course, we would like you to be excellent researcher, teacher, and a team player. And all areas of statistics will be given serious consideration. However, we prefer that you will have interest or adaptive ideas in modern emerging areas. We like you to be renowned leader. How are we going to do about hiring? It's going to be 100% online. And we will have 3 steps. And we will have a screening interview. We did that even last year, a year before, even when we are in a normal situation. There will be always an online screening interview. Then there will be formal interview. So this time formal interview will be also online. Then there will be negotiation, decision, and offers. And our review process will start in a few days, Monday next week, November 16th. This is under the condition, nothing changes dramatically. If things change dramatically, we suddenly have vaccine, we will be very happy. We will welcome people to come into campus. But at this point, from the expense exposure perspective, it's not worth the exposure. So most likely be 100% online. And when you do an interview, it's very important that you'll be able to show your face and interact online and not just use the excuse, my Zoom doesn't work, my internet is not working. Prepare for it, find a good Wi-Fi place. Okay, so that's what we have. And advice to candidates, apply early. We do need have various statements. We need your resume. We need a statement for research, a statement for teaching, and also a statement for diversity. What does that mean to you? Just apply early. Look into, and if you don't have enough time to do it, and you might miss some important points. Other advices include be yourself, be honest, be prepared. So if you want to look into what we do, I have given you 2 links. And one is a general link for the university, and that is a link for the department. And we are in the process of updating our webpage, but you still should be able to see a lot of useful information. And feel free to ask questions at interviews. Just be proactive and prepared. I'm repeating in advance. Okay, I included a few pictures. And if you want to ask questions, I'll be happy to respond. And I'm going to repeat about those pictures to talk about our department and our university. And we are in Fairfax, Virginia, and we're in national capital areas. So here is a picture, those 2 pictures I took. And this is a picture which I took in Cherry Blossom. At that time, we were about to shut down. And we were worried about, should we go, should we not go? So that was a picture I took in Cherry Blossom. And we are only 30 minutes away from downtown DC. So we do have a metro to DC. And it is in beautiful Virginia. And if you walk around the campus and there are areas, it's like trails in woods. It's very beautiful. And if you want to find housing, this is one of the backyard of the house I almost made an offer to. Swimming pool, there are a lot of swimming pools. So if you want to have a swimming pool. And our school system and Fairfax has a top rated school system. If you search for 10 best high schools in the country, Fairfax is ranked #1 in the country. And if you also search the place you want to retire for, and Fairfax there as well. And in national capital areas, housing could be issue. And I look for house, the price really going up. It's a good sign. But if you want a rental housing, Mason has a rental housing for faculty. So you can come in and wait for a year and check what you want to do. And we're a young university, so we're ranked top in so-called upcoming universities. And we're in high-tech corridors, and which contains Amazon. Amazon's headquarters too is coming, Microsoft, IBM. And also best of all, we are really in the center of a cultural technology institutes. So there are a lot of great opportunities for federal jobs, for academic jobs, and industry jobs. And if you want to look at what we do, and our department is in engineering school. And so we have access and to many different divisions of engineering. And also we have a contract to Innova Health, one of the leading hospitals in the nation. So if you want to do research related to health sciences, you also have an opportunity. And if you want to do federal related research related to criminal justice, and we have a lot of faculty funded by Department of Justice as well. Our teaching load is fairly reasonable for tenure track faculty. And so I would say it's called 1-1, 1-1, 1-0, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 for the first 6 years. So 1-1 in the first year, 1-1 in the second year, 1-0. So you have a chance to have a mini sabbatical to spruce up your research for your tenure promotion consideration. In next 3 years, you will have 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. All of those workload policy is written. It's transparent. And if you want to buy off a course, it's 15%. It's very low. When I compare with other institutions that I have been before, it's very low. Some will require 20% and 30% for each course buy off, and ours 15%. So now I'd be happy to answer your questions. That's all I want to share with.
Yeah, thank you, Jiayang, for sharing the information about GMU. And then now, we'll go to the Q&A session. So so all three speakers, you can open your video. Yeah, so during the Q&A session, we have 2 ways. So the participants have 2 ways to ask questions. So you may either type your question in the Q&A window, so I will pay attention to that, or so you can raise your hand, and then I can unmute your voice, and then you can just talk directly to our speakers. Yeah, so here's one question from James. So what are the recommended length for teaching research and diversity statements? So it's a very practical question. So any of our speakers could answer that.
I do not have recommendation, but I think it should be concise and to the point.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing I will say about GMU, I meant to say, when you apply, we do not need your recommendation letters. However, if you have gone through screening process, we're going to need your letter quick. Okay, so just be prepared.
Yeah, so any other question from the audience? Yeah, so would you like to, I can open your mic.
So there is a question in the chat room as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Ishmael from Purdue. Thank you, everyone, for sharing great information. That was super helpful. So I have a quick question about the timing of applications. So currently, I'm applying to multiple schools. I already have some interviews, and I'm thinking like how to deal with early offers, potentially early offers, while I have like a lot of pending applications from like my ideal schools, like more suitable. So how to deal with this? And the situation is very uncertain. And so I don't want to decline potential offers, but then how to, I know this is a stopping problem, well-known problem, but I would appreciate your inputs on that. Thank you.
So I'll just take a stab at answering that. So I very strongly believe in not kind of trying to game the system to get somebody to accept the position. So my inclination is to extend offers long enough to allow a candidate to make an informed decision. Because the last thing in the world I want is somebody to kind of have regrets about taking a position. That said, if it was the other way around, and somebody was to contact me and say, you know, I have this offer, can you speed things up? Most likely that's not something that I would be able to do once we have a process established. Kind of have to treat that the same. But I also agree that this is kind of always a problem and makes things complicated. I think my advice would be to simply communicate with whoever has given you the offers and understand their constraints and be transparent. That said, I don't know that, you know, you'll always be able to resolve these types of issues.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll respond to that as well. It depends. And I think first of all, you need to self-evaluate yourself and whether it's something you want to take the risk, you lose current offers to wait something which is not coming, and versus you know the others are coming. And then I think it will be best to tell the current place that maybe you are not going to consider, because that will be good for the current place as well, for them to move on to other candidates. So that's the general advice. For GMU, it's not the issue, even though this year we try to push to interview earlier. Usually we are the one a little later to interview people. So that's where we are.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so let's move to the next one. Yeah, so I just unmute my voice. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, thank you for your talk. Currently, I'm a PhD student in biostatistics in the University of California, San Diego. I'm going into my third year. And I was wondering, for some of the faculty positions that you mentioned, would you recommend having a postdoctoral position before applying to them? Or what would that be beneficial for like a candidate's application?
I'll take a stab at that one. Definitely, we don't require a postdoc as something that you need to have for us to consider you for a position. But one thing that I do think has happened since particularly the crisis in the 2008, 2009, is that, so the long-term consequence of that crisis where there was not a lot of hiring is that people started taking postdocs as a way to kind of bridge the gap. And so you suddenly had a lot more candidates in your pool that had a postdoc position. And in fact, that's something, so thinking about long-term impacts of the current crisis that Kate was mentioning in the beginning, I think that I agree with her that I don't see a long-term impact in terms of, you know, the positions that are not hired now will be eventually hired further down the road, so the growth will continue. But there is a little bit of, or one consequence is probably that there is going to be more people taking on postdoc positions, and therefore there is going to be more competition for the students that are just coming out and want to try to find a job right off grad school. So the answer is, I don't think that it's required, but I think that it's also important to understand that some of the competition that you're facing, just kind of what the landscape looks like, it's probably going to change moving forward. The other comment that I would make more generally, this is what I tell my students, is it depends. So having a postdoc can help you if you are very productive during your postdoc, but if you are not very productive during your postdoc, it can actually hurt your prospects of getting a job. So it's not a guarantee. You really have to make sure that you're taking the right postdoc that also can broaden a little bit kind of the spectrum of your research that that will really make you more competitive. So it's no guarantee that taking a postdoc will help you get a job later on.
I would like to echo Abel's statement. Postdoc is not required. So if you remember my slide for preferred qualifications for a tenure track faculty for junior candidates is potential for excellence and productivity in research. So if your PhD has shown you having excellence and productivity, for example, you already have 2 papers published. You don't need to wait for postdoc in good journal. You can definitely apply, okay? And if you don't have any, there is no any sign to show potential for excellence or productivity, then with a lot of applicants, then your chance may not be that high. So if you want to go for postdoc at that point, and make sure you go to what Abel's saying, it's going to help you for your resume. If it's not going to help you for your resume, now 2 years out, you still have a resume like what you have now, it's going to hurt you. So that's just general recommendation.
Yeah. So thanks. So so let's move to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your talks today. It's informative to hear perspectives. And one other piece of your perspective that wasn't mentioned, but I would be very curious about is particularly if one of your candidates has multiple offers, the advice in the world is to negotiate your salary and try to have what the best offer you can. What's your advice or perspective on that from the school and department side? Or just to not do it at all?
My answer would be that it really depends on the situation. I think that if you do it, especially for junior positions, there's oftentimes very little room to negotiate on, say, starting salary and that kind of thing. But if you could make a convincing case why maybe you need a higher startup because of some component of your research or something, I think that can be compelling. And I think that maybe even doesn't require another offer. Sure. Where I'd be very careful about it is kind of quibbling over things that are not major differences in salary. So especially in salary or in startup or those kinds of things. So, trying to kind of play hardball and get, an extra $1,000 or something like that to a salary is probably not worth it in the long run. But I don't know if others kind of disagree on that.
Yeah, I would say salary is not everything, and there are other things that you can negotiate. So Kate brought up startups, but there are teaching loads, for example. So something is something that you, at least as a chair, I have more discretion on. So, if I need to give you an extra course relief at some point, that's something that I can negotiate. Class assignments, there are things like that that can actually make a major difference in your academic career. And that may be worth your time more than $1,000 salary. And it's not that I'm discounting salary as something that is important, but it's also a matter of understanding how the different universities work. For example, I used to be at the UC system. And in the UC system, there is kind of a natural system to raise salaries that works pretty well. So that's, for example, an environment in which I would not necessarily try to quibble too much with salaries, where there are other environments in which salary raises are harder to get, and that So getting some advice from people that know the institutions may be a good thing to do.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that my sense is most department chairs are going for the highest salary that they possibly can get. They have no reason to try to, like, that money doesn't come back to the department if we save it by offering lower salaries. So, you know, most likely getting anything else would require going above. And so, you know, yeah, I would say, again, maybe a senior position where you're talking about a substantial difference in salary, that's worth it. But I would say for a junior position, there probably isn't much flexibility there.
Okay.
I'll add, typically what Kay said about that, those are true. In our situation, if you ever going to ask for salary, my recommendation is that you need to have some basis and leverage to ask diplomatically. So I'll tell you my experience. I'm a new chair, so when they offered me a salary, I didn't say anything. I just said, could I tell you my current salary? Okay, so that's the starting point. You don't just say, okay, they give you a salary, you say, too low. That's not the way to talk. Okay, so you need to be diplomatic, have a basis. So if a university is advertising, they're going to have a compatible salary, you can bring ASA salary figure to say, if that's the case, can you do that? That's usually for senior person. And another way you could do is say, I have a competing offer. I'm still interested in yours. My competing offer is this. Okay, just be diplomatic, has a basis. If you don't have a basis, I think you should just take the best you have.
Yeah.
One extra little thing that people, I certainly wasn't thinking about it when I was looking for jobs, is the benefits can vary drastically across institutions. And it's amazing how much of your total compensation benefits represent at the end of the day. So two salaries that, you know, maybe $1,000 less in one place, actually, when you think about the benefits that are included, like retirement and things like that, really means a lot more money in total compensation, even if the salary is $1,000 less. So I guess my other piece of advice is, I know that you guys, for the most part, are probably quite younger than I am and are not necessarily thinking about what's going to happen 30 years down the road when you retire, but it actually does make a huge difference. So don't underestimate that piece and ask questions about that.
I think the salary, I mean, should not be the most concern, because so we are in a good world. I mean, statistics right now, we are expanding, and then the enrollment is increasing. So the salary, I mean, compared to when I start my job, is much higher now. Yeah. So it shouldn't be that concern. So okay, so let's move to the next one.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for your time. This has been really helpful, and I'm particularly interested in your feedback for students without much teaching experience. For example, do you think someone would still be a good candidate for an R1 institution if they don't have much teaching experience, but they have considerable research experience?
That would depend on how your presentation would go. If you did well, then we would think you're a good communicator and a good teacher in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as somebody who took a tenure track position at an R1 institution without very much teaching experience as a grad student, I you know, am an example of that happening. But one thing I would say, again, the presentation is very important, but I also think kind of how you convey your attitude towards teaching can also be very important. So for example, if statements, and I'm not saying you would make such a statement, but saying, you know, I didn't have to teach when I was a grad student, or, you know, you know, am looking for a position that has minimal teaching combined with no teaching experience. Those kinds of things can kind of send the wrong message. At least the places where I've worked, you know, teaching is only a part of the position, but the idea is to be excellent at all aspects of your job. And so you don't want to come across as something, or as thinking or presenting yourself as believing that teaching isn't important or wouldn't be important to you moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so let's move to the next one.
Hi, thank you all for your time and the great presentations. I was wondering if you had any specific advice to applicants who are applicants from outside the field of statistics. So for instance, in my case, coming from applied math.
I can try to take a stab at that because I used to be in an applied math and statistics department. So I guess, so it depends on who you're talking to. So some people may be more reticent towards hiring kind of outside stats and maybe computer science than others. So the answer to this will depend drastically on what faculty you're talking to. I think one pitfall that I see in people that are coming from kind of connected fields into statistics is not really necessarily understanding in some ways the language, but in also the kind of the literature in statistics that connects to what is being presented. And so you sometimes see somebody trying to present something that is essentially an idea that has been floating around in statistics for a long time and not necessarily recognizing that contribution. And so I think that one of the important things to do if you're coming into an interview in a stats department is to make sure that you understand the connection between what you are doing and what is already out there in the field, not only within applied math, but in the statistics community. So I think that is the major pitfall that I've seen people commit.
In our case, if we have TTIP positions and all TTIP positions are joint, some joined with mathematics department, some joined with engineering, biomedical engineering, some with our School of College of Health Human Services. And so as long as you are in data science and fit into the general theme we are looking for, and if you are a good fit in terms of your research, you can make a good connection. I think that will be a good candidate.
Maybe I'll just add, I don't know what career stage you are, but sometimes I've seen people who've kind of pivoted into faculty positions that aren't in the area in which their PhD is in, doing really well with a postdoc. So for example, if you were to do a postdoc in a statistics department, that would give you extra experience to kind of understand what's going on in the statistics community and could really kind of help you move in that direction if that's what you wanted to do. That said, I wouldn't discourage you from applying for any position based on what your degree is in.
Thank you.
So let's move to the next one.
Oh, hi again. I just want to follow up on Professor Sun's comment on potential for excellent research and maybe also get an opinion from the others. What sort of metrics could one use to evaluate that they are producing an adequate research output to be competitive for these positions? And maybe since I'm still like a PhD student, what sort of targets should I kind of set for like my research if I'm interested in applying for faculty positions in the future?
Okay, in our case, we have a search committee, and a search committee will have a group of people, and they're going to rank everyone. So we sum up a score. That's what we do. But personally, I would think if you want to show the potential, where will we show? One is that you already have a publication, projects you worked on, they are actual deliverables, okay? And if you write, you have worked on many things, but there's no delivery. And delivery could be paper published, paper submitted, presentation you have done. And so those are all deliveries. But how to evaluate each of them, I guess it will be common sense. Different people could vary slightly. And it's almost like as statistician, we look at the distribution. There could be a mode, but there will be variation. But general guideline, you need to have a deliveries.
So your letter writers play a big role in contextualizing your work and talking about your promise. So actually that's one of the secrets, is getting good letter writers, and good letter writers are not always the famous people, are the people that can really speak to what your contribution to the field is. So somebody that understands your research and understands the field that you're in. So that is kind of one piece of advice around that. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that some faculty look at where papers are published and where you have given talks and things like that. So for some faculty, that's going to be important. But I want to think that, you know, the more discerning faculty actually look at the work itself. So we'll read, that's why you provide 3 papers or 4 papers with many applications, so that people can look at the work that you have done and evaluate the work. And of course, that's easier if you have people that actually know your discipline within the department than if that's not the case. So there is going to be some variability. The other thing that I would point out is that so a continuous conversation is, you know, where is the discipline going and what are things going to be important, not only today, but what things are going to be important 10 years down the road. And that will vary within a department and across departments. So that evaluation is in some ways very subjective. So one reason not to necessarily take a rejection personally.
Yeah, so thank you. So now we're gonna have the last question of the day.
So I have one more question. Could you guys please explain some of the details of like phone or Zoom interviews? So I've been searching, you know, to better prepare, but seems like a lot of information out there trying to make it like a game and pretend, but I was wondering like how to be prepared better and be yourself at the same time. So how is this? If you explain some of the details, that would be great. Thank you.
So I mean, we're still kind of trying to figure out the best formats. And, you know, I learned things from my fellow panelists here and kind of ideas that maybe we'll want to try as well. One thing I'd recommend, of course, you know, practicing your talk, but you might want to practice giving it on Zoom. So just get somebody to, you know, a friend or something to connect with you and give a practice talk on Zoom. It's very weird giving a talk when you can't see anybody else's face. And so getting experience with that, I think could be very helpful. You know, also maybe just kind of having conversations with friends, you know, over Zoom could be helpful too. For example, if there's other graduate students, maybe you could kind of have a Zoom session where you each take turns explaining something about your research. I think that could help in terms of your comfort level with that. That said, I think we all expect it to be a little bit strange and unnatural. And, you know, again, from the departments that are hiring, you know, we're trying to project, you know, what somebody's career is going to look like, you know, over the next 20, 30 years. And, you know, somebody being, you know, struggling a bit with Zoom, it should not be the determining factor. So, you know, I would say as much as you can, try not to worry about it too much, and realize that it isn't going to be a little mistake with Zoom that's going to make a determination on whether you get a position or not.
I probably want to add here. So the advice are 3 points. 1, practice with someone you trust. 2nd, find online tips. I'll get back to tips. And the 3rd is be prepared, because there could be questions you didn't prepare for it. So you need to look around and what will be. For finding tips, I remember there was something written by some fellows from AAAS, how to do online Zoom interview, which included something like, don't put on your pajamas, because when you talk, you just suddenly walking around, you have suit on, but then your pajama shows. Another is position your face in the middle, especially if you are interviewee instead of interviewer, which has a lot less requirement. And make sure your voice can be heard. Everyone can be nervous, even us. After teaching many years, sometimes we can be nervous. But if you are better prepared and you can understand the anxiety. And so another thing which I will recommend you to do, but it's personal recommendation, definitely not required. And I have a speaker now. And after joining this meeting, and we had to record our own talks. When we talk face-to-face like this, it's better. And because you have facial expressions and everything, some people can understand you, even you have an accent or you stutter a little bit, you're nervous at this point. Some people can see that's no big deal. But if you record, so we're talking about biases. In terms of voice recording, I don't know if you have noticed, if people pre-record it, when it comes back to play it, for people who have accents, your enunciation and everything is distorted further. Why? Because some of the things is recording things coming back to the system, it's trying to transcribe. So if you look at your recordings in the Zoom, when those automatic transcription come out, some of them are nonsense. And that's basically its bias in the data they have, how they're going to transcribe. So because of that, I highly recommend you, if you don't have a good computer, don't have a good speaker, spend some money, not much money, have a speaker connected to it. And as you practice with your friend, ask them if they can hear you clearly. Because we are trying to evaluate you if you're a good communicator, if you're a good researcher, if you're a good teacher. So if we couldn't understand you, couldn't communicate with you, that's going to be difficult. And also remember, we're going to do it online. Your personality will be taken on the face value, how you communicate. So if your Zoom is not working, if something's wrong, that's my another advice. Don't blame on the people who are trying to interview you. That's a no-no situation. We interview people all the time. Even if it could be other party, it will be very important to think about for the other people and yourself. That's just general advice for anyone, is to respect everybody around you. So that would be my just general advice, how you do from Zoom, because that's what we're going to see. We don't see you in the dinner situation, not knowing what you would like in other situations. And anything you do online, we're going to look at it, try to look at from different perspectives. So just try to be prepared. So I summarize: practice, find tips, be prepared.
So I guess Ye Yang would object to my Mandalorian background.
No, I don't object to. I have accent too myself. When I first recorded in my own voice, I hated it. I never knew I could do that. There were some people giving big speech. I knew he was a good speaker, but it was terrible last time at a GSM. So it's the AI bias. It's not our problem. But then
yeah, that was just a joke.
Yeah.
That was just a joke. So I'll try to speak very briefly because we are kind of over time. But so for us, I think it's useful to think about kind of 3 different contexts. So our first short interviews will actually be very scripted. And so there will be 3, 4, 5 predetermined questions that everybody's going to get that kind of try to delve or to look at issues that may not necessarily be clear from the statements and from the written materials that you submitted. So that part is, it's hard to tell you in advance what it's going to be, but you can expect kind of a scripted questions, very concrete, rather than just a free interaction with the interviewers for the very first round. Then there is the talks, and I don't really have a lot more to add to what Kate Jiayang already said. So prepare for the talk. That's kind of completely different framework. Something that some institutions may be thinking about doing, and my department didn't want to go down that route, was to actually have the talk be pre-recorded and just record the talk, play the talk, and then have a 20-minute Q&A that was live about the talk. I think that in statistics, and I agree with my department, I think in statistics, it works better if the whole thing is live. But some disciplines and some departments may decide to do this kind of pre-recorded thing and then a short interaction. And then there is kind of, if you go to the final phases of the process, there will be free form interactions with faculty during one-on-one or one-on-two meetings. And those in some ways look a lot like the one-on-ones that you'd have in person, with the additional kind of challenges of being remote and the loss of communication that happens because of that. The one piece that I want to reiterate that I did mention in my talk is some faculty in that particular stage, and maybe even the Q&A for the talk, will want to get into some of the technical details. And some of those can be really hard to convey if you're not able to write. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get, a fancy Apple Pen or anything like that. So there are kind of much cheaper options that allow you to write and scribble on a whiteboard that comes out of Zoom, for example. That may actually help you quite a bit. So practicing with that, making sure that you have the hardware, it may cost you $50 to get, or $60 to get, something like that. But I think that being prepared for that scenario will be very helpful, particularly in those later stages of the interview.
Just one small thing to add with that too is, most departments have invested a lot in kind of remote teaching technology. So even if you don't personally have at your home these tools, it's very likely somebody does and that you could borrow it. I certainly would let any graduate student, take my office for a day if they're doing an interview or something like that, because I'm not using it. So I would kind of use your local community to help you. That's both for industry positions and academic positions. I think we all recognize how hard this is, and anything we could do to make the process easier for our students and postdocs, I think we'd be willing to try.
Just one last addition. This Zoom is a lot different from Zoom, which we use. In the one we use, there will be a lower button. It's called Annotate. Once you annotate, you can write on screen your slide, almost like a pen, so you can do things. So if if the place has that, make sure you just go to lower right, find that annotation pen, then you will be able to write, to explain.
Yeah, and get familiar with the platform. Some places will use Zoom, some places will use Citrix, and they all work more or less the same, but they have their quirks. So make sure that you are told what platform you're going to be using and that you get a little bit of practice with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank our speakers.
Thank you very much. They were super helpful.
Yeah, I have one last tip to, maybe it's time to upgrade your internet plan. Yeah, to make sure that you're not, yeah, maybe it's a good investment. Yeah. And then today the three speakers share a lot of very important information and also very valuable tips to our students and postdocs. And then we're gonna have a second academic career fairs in December, so that we will have a chance to talk to 3 other NIST affiliates who also have multiple openings this year. And then so stay tuned for the more details. Also, I create kind of the informal social hours, so that if the participants you like, you can join for to talk a little bit. So speakers you don't need to attend. Yeah. So it's just for the participants. Yeah. So yeah, and then okay. So I think that's all for today. So let's thank our speakers again. So thank you for your invaluable time. Yeah. So the best luck to all our participants. Yeah.